the same end goal, which is to expose Zionism and the Jewish supremacy that is effectively running our country and much of the world, and how it's using modern Christianity to push that belief. And it's basically an amazing cover because it says, "We must those who bless Israel are blessed; those who curse Israel curse." Really, no matter what they do, we have to support them. So it allows them to do whatever, and we have to obey whatever they say. So it's like this amazing tool that they're using. He says, yeah, because they created Christianity for that very reason, and it's been a deception since the beginning, and it's all a myth. I say, okay, well, I don't agree. The evidence doesn't seem to suggest that because you actually have to get more towards the Schofield Bible to really get into a mass adoption within Christianity of that interpretation of Israel itself, right? And you don't even have the physical state until the 40s. And now they're claiming that physical secular nation state called Israel is prophetically fulfilling the fact that we now need to bless them. When prior to the Schofield Bible, that was an unheard of position. You get Darby and then the Schofield Bible pushing that, infiltrating all the ministries and pushing this new modern version of Christianity, this Zionist Christian thing. That was an unknown thing. So I'll make the point to him that it's like, well, think about this. Obviously, the odds are you're not going to be able to convince everyone that's a Christian that, oh, it's all fake, it's all mythos, especially when even like the vast majority of researched people, like atheist secular academics, for example, strongly disagree with the claim that Jesus or Yeshua didn't even exist at all whatsoever. So you've already narrowed down the chances of you actually reaching people or getting them to agree with you significantly, even in terms of atheists, because you're denying he existed whatsoever. Then, in addition to that, you're actually trying to
I'm
convince the
remaining
Christian.
quiet and
Yeah,
letting
but
you
because I think
finish.
this is important, and I just want to unpack it. Then you're actually, so I'm just thinking about statistically, tactically, what the odds of success are here. And then you're actually trying to convince the Christians that they need to completely turn away from like a spiritual belief they've internalized, maybe grew up with or whatever. And I'm saying, don't you think that you might have a much greater success rate if you try to convince, to show them just the fact that Christianity, their religion, has been infiltrated in the last century to push an entirely new doctrine that actually isn't in the scriptures. It required a new type of Bible with little subtitles and notes, right? To tell them that's what it's really saying. Trust me, bro, because it's not in there. And that they got tricked into believing this Zionist Christian interpretation that actually isn't in the Bible. And whether or not he agrees or disagrees is the last thing I'm saying here. With all that being considered, maybe you disagree that that's the more effective way to go, but don't you see that tactically speaking, it would be better that both of those different approaches work together to reach the end goal? And every time I say that, he says, "Oh, well, you're," because I point out the scriptures actually aren't Zionists or like, they don't support the Israel state. They don't say that at all. It says the opposite. It says that not everyone from Israel is of Israel. It says there is no Jew nor Greek. Like it's a complete bastardization of what the scriptures actually say. And every time I point it
You
out to
got
him,
to
he
let me
says,
get in at
well,
some point.
this last, yeah, but every time I point out to him, he says, well, your position isn't the popular one anyway. Almost all other Christians don't think that. Okay, so that's he's not even arguing that I'm correct that we should work together or that if Christians were shown that they were lied to about what the Bible says, that it would fix the problem. He's just saying, oh, well, most people don't think that anyway. And so I'm curious what your take is on that. How is it somehow beneficial to go to war with me when we have the same goal?
Okay, so there's a short-term goal and a long-term goal, and if we conflate the two, we get confused. And the reason why is because if you said like the short-term goal is like let's avoid annihilation through some end times war that the Zionists are trying to get us into, Gog Magog, Samson option, fighting the Muslims over Holy Land or something like that, right? So maybe that's one of our goals. Let's avoid that. That's a short-term goal because that's at hand. Long-term goal is also, we do need to survive in order to have the long-term goal fulfilled, but also like the idea is to come out from under the yoke of basically a Jewish mind virus that our people have inherited over the last couple thousand years, where we've been turned into we've got into this master slave paradigm where there's a ruling priesthood who controls our minds, where we're on the naughty or nice list, that God is always watching us, and you know, we've been taken away from our ancestral heritage where we basically had these gods that were sort of human. They were heroes, they had egos, and we had a way of relating to the gods as a way of understanding our own psychology. and it made us into the people that we actually truly are in our blood and bones. And that was taken away from us and replaced with something that the Jews invented. So Adam takes great umbrage to that, and so do I. So the long-term goal is to have a humanity that's free from that Jewish mind virus that's called Christianity. In the short term, there's also the Schofield issue where the modern day evangelicals are uniting with the Jews, and they're doing this weird thing in Israel. That is a problem at hand now. But to say that we have the same goal while you're actually subverting the long-term goal is actually incongruent. So the problem with the Jewish thing is not just Zionism. It didn't just emerge during Zionism Schofield. We've had this long relationship between the synagogue and the church, and this weird thing of like 109 times we kick the can down the road, 109 times they flee to another Christian region, or they just converted or something like this, where but still the Semitic strategy has persisted. They ended up in high levels of positions of money lending and stuff because we wouldn't do it, but we allowed them to do it, and all sorts of weird little ancillary effects of coexisting with a foreign strategy living among us in our lands. That's been enabled and allowed by Christianity in many ways. So it hasn't been all bad with Christianity. I would never say that. It
But
definitely united a lot of our regions and things like
this
that.
was
There's been positive benefits. I'll land pretty quick, and I think I'm still not even close to half as long as you went. But the thing is, so while you're representing it as though we basically agree on everything, but we just differ on the strategy, the big fundamental problem, even with the short-term strategy, is that Adam is in this community where people are hip to the JQ or JP or whatever you want to call it, but we see people who have been woken up to the subversion among us, the people in our institutions and this and that, and then they want to go out with this war cry of they killed our savior. And once people start doing that, once we have Christian right wing, red pilled people holding up the cross, saying Christ is King, they killed our savior, basically committing a blood libel, which is something that they've already essentially outlawed. You're really actually sort of walking us into a trap. So as long as there's Christian right wingers, Christian JQ people leading the charge or in all these conversations saying Christ is King and we got to pray to have Jesus save us from this thing and pray harder, and they offended me because they killed our savior and stuff like this. This actually literally poisons the conversation in a couple ways. Number one, it sets us up for all sorts of persecution under these laws that are basically you're doing religious discrimination, which is not allowed in our land. Number two, there's a huge population of people in America, white people included, that are secular already. So it's not about converting all the Christians. It's about making this conversation in this climate more acclimated for secular people to join in. Because when secular people who are into science, who went to college, who have a secular worldview, all they have is atheists who are basically liberal, progressive, cut your cock off tranny, like this kind of thing. And so that's all that they get. And then when they come over to in any of our spaces or any of our conversation, what they hear is they killed our savior and the earth's flat and stuff like this. And me and Adam go like, shit, this is poisoning the well. It's a turd in the punch bowl. What if we could get smart engineers, high level thinkers who are secular to take us more seriously because we left behind this mythological bullshit? But you're saying, no, we need to reify the idea that Jesus was real, reify basically what Adam and I see as a myth, continue to talk about the creators guiding us, and we live under like Yahweh's terrarium and stuff. And we're going, no, 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 no. You shouldn't even be in this conversation because you're excluding people with a brain from coming in. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I mean, like, there's a lot of people who are high level, powerful people with influence and money who are secular, and they won't listen to us because we're surrounded and flooded with Christians, and they despise it. They say that's bullshit. So we're actually just trying to purge this conversation of that. We're not trying to convince all the Christians to stop being Christians. That'd be great. And you might say that's totally impossible. I would say it's less than zero because it's already going that direction. Christianity is already on the way down. Church attendance is already on the way down. Zoomers are highly irreligious. So the only place that Christianity is really growing is in Africa.
All right, dude. We get it.
All right,
dude.
now I'll wrap it.
You want Christians
I still haven't got as
purged out of
long
this.
as Witsit. I still haven't got as long as
Christians
Witsit, but
purged.
I'll
We
land
get
it.
it.
But the point is, it's not about converting all Christians to non-Christianity. It's about taking this conversation and making it rooted in reality rather than in the myth that the Jews themselves invented.
If this guy's running around saying Jesus didn't exist, what does he think he's going to do with the Christians?
I'm not worried about the Christians. The Christians are all brainwashed. The Christians are all going to the church. Christians are all emotional. They're voting for Trump, and they're Christians are basically, they have the leash around their neck. The people who don't are the ones that we need to reach.
I know, but didn't you say that this is the same guy that's running around pushing his Jesus didn't even exist thing? So if that would like get rid of Christianity, if that no.
No, Christianity's going to go on its own. It's already on its way out. That was my point. It's already going downhill. The point is, what if we could get atheists? There's a lot of them, and people who are basically secular, irreligious people to have this conversation with us, but they're unwilling to because when they come in the circle, it's just a bunch of Jesus talk. So Adam's
Dude,
trying to make
atheists
a wedge.
are, respectfully, they hold one of the most inept positions ideologically that exists. And
And what's your thermodynamic argument?
That's your opinion, and it's
Hit 'em.
no,
fine.
it's not an
But
opinion.
it is
It's
what it
just
is.
it's just
But I mean,
it's
like,
a
okay, but so
necessary
are Christians
implication.
then.
It's a
And so are
necessary
Christians.
implication. It's a necessary implication of natural law. Okay, but
But if
this
you're going
is
to make
what
that argument, I could say the same thing about the Christians that you're trying to reach out to.
that's not really the point. The point is that you're just acting like we need to tailor the entire approach to atheists as if there's some type of superior intellectual.
No, it's not about
That is what
tailoring it
you're
to them
saying.
because they're superior. It's like,
That is
can't we
what you're
just make?
saying.
I'm saying,
Yeah,
can't we
dude,
make it to where they might even like hear us out and they might learn?
Yes, that's
Like,
what I'm
but they
saying, Big Tech. That's what I'm saying. That's why you would want to have someone like Adam Green, who is, let's just call it like it is. He's an atheist. And then you have someone like me who believes in the scripture that can both resonate with the various groups, right? With the specific groups, and that can actually get the primary point across to them so they can be awakened to the deception and the actual oppressive power that exists. But no, no, no. Adam Green comes in, knocks all the pieces off the board, says my way or the highway. Everyone's going to go this route. And anyone that dare believes in the scriptures is an ideological enemy. And he puts all of his energy into attacking them, actually, less energy into going against the actual imminent existential threat, and more energy into a group of people, even that largely agree with the identification of the existential threat, and try to go at them because of what they believe. And I have tried to talk to him and reason with him and say there's actually a very productive situation here, scenario here, where we show people you can put your differences aside, even with something as big as atheist, or I won't publicly say atheist, but I am an atheist, and someone who believes in the scriptures, that still we're all, say, Americans. We all understand the importance of nationality, of freedom, of the ability to express ourselves. We all care about our children, how they're being sexualized and confused, how our borders are being flooded with major demographic shift, et cetera, et cetera. How degeneracy and depravity is being shoved into our society, and how we're on the brink of collapse, and we have a birth rate that's plummeting, and that before we turn around, we're going to be entirely unrecognizable as America. We cannot wait for some long-term ideological goal of eradicating the earth of Christianity. It is so stupid. It's short-sighted. It completely misses the point. You're going to have a 0% chance of accomplishing any of your ideological goals of moving some
Right.
type of idea around. I'm almost done. If you actually don't take care of the existential threat that's at the door, he should be able to put his pride aside and understand that in order to be the strongest, you have to actually work together. He refuses to do this.
Yo, real quick, let me get in. Hold on. The moral fabric, because you're promoting secular humanism, dude. You know, move away from religion, move away from Christianity, adopt secular cosmology, right? A secular religion, scientism. That's what you're promoting, and we know that when with that comes sexual deviance, right? The moral fabric of society is of the utmost importance. And you have Russian KGB agents in the 80s, like Uri Bezmenov and these other guys, that this is a tactic. This is what topples nations. This is what brings down nations, is OnlyFans and prostitution and lawlessness. And that's basically, if you don't have a moral structure like me and Witsit, bro, you'll fall to anything, bro. Your morals have no foundation. You know, they're subjective.
The
It's a
first thing
different
communist
conversation,
takeovers
and
did was
it's a
remove
non
God.
sequitur.
No, it's not, because when you remove objective morality or any linear code of ethics, then the entire morality of the society collapses. There is no
But
actual
morality
structure.
doesn't have to come from Jesus.
It doesn't, you're right, but it does have to acknowledge an actual intellectual design, an intelligent design with an objective moral code and a linear code of
doesn't.
ethics.
Doesn't
It
require
actually
that.
does. It only
No.
does it for those who aren't able to understand the actual philosophical
So then,
implications of that
if
position.
that's true, then all of our ancestors before they were Christians, they were just a bunch of immoral bastards.
Not all of them, but a lot of them, yes. Like, let's go all the way back to the Scythians, the actual origin that's been lied about, right,
Were they
academically.
sexual deviants doing OnlyFans?
They were
Debauchery,
absolutely
dude.
deviants. Are you kidding
Heathenism,
me?
dude.
Yo, have you looked into what they did at all? So, like, yeah, we don't need to go back to the 1200s or to 1400 BC and be like the Vikings. No, we actually don't. What we need to do is recognize that the greatest country in the world is the United States. And the reason it's the greatest country in the world is because it was built upon Christian principles. And whether or not you even agree with Christianity, you should be
No.
smart enough and wise enough to notice the benefit it has provided for our society. And it
Okay.
was
No offense,
fundamentally Christian.
I've acknowledged
but
that there was a
no, I
benefit.
gotta disagree.
I would never say there was no
I can
benefit. But there's a
I can
benefit to
provide
slavery, and also our, if you want to repeal to the Nordics, like they had their own code of ethics and morality that was not based on some sort of like logical, intelligent design, lawgiver, Torah, sin concept. It was based on nobility, heroism, striving for excellence. There was, ancestral reverence, looking toward the great man, trying to be like him, looking toward the wicked one, avoiding him, punishing those who are wicked, exalting those who are good. That's how we did it for all the ages. Christianity did unite us, but also, I mean, again, slavery, you can build a lot of things with slaves, but if you turn everybody's mind into a slave mindset, you can do great things with it. That doesn't mean it was a great thing for us, the slaves.
Well, still, I gotta disagree with you, Witsit, on this being built on a Christian foundation. I can show several quotes from founding fathers that like that was not the goal with this nation. Like
Yeah,
I
no,
don't
that you are entering a losing argument. You can only have a few cherry picked quotes from like one or two people. And even then, when you actually read the entirety of their literature, they point out the importance of Christianity. And if you actually look at what founded this country, look at it, right? You weren't even able to hold office if you didn't profess Jesus early on in the United
Right.
States when it comes to the actual
I
colonies.
agree with that.
And
No, the history
and
does back that up. The
yeah,
history backs that
it
up,
was
but
prominently Christian, and in fact, the way that it was written, like even where it's like more vague, it was assumed the freedom of religion. This is actually written and explained in detail. The freedom of religion was actually under the assumption that the prominent ideology was going to be Christianity, and it was to make sure that you could protect the ability to be Protestant or have different interpretations of the Bible without having to adhere to like rigid Catholicism or any type of specific like
right.
monopolistic religion. The freedom of religion was about different branches of Christianity. You literally couldn't even hold political office in the United States if you weren't a Christian for many, many years.
But the problem is that eventually leads us essentially to where we are, because we're essentially, if we're going to tolerate that, we're going to tolerate, unless you have some method for curbing the erosion that's inherent in that type of plan, which we didn't. We end up right where we are, which is if you don't have a rigid adherence to one orthodoxy, you're sort of allowing all sorts of different factions and schisms and heresies and this and that. And then what else do you not tolerate? Becomes the question. And now we have our answer here in this day and age. But my view is that, look, a lot of people like to quote Nietzsche because he's like a British philosopher and whatever. But one incredible foresight that he had, almost prophetic, he was forecasting the age of nihilism, which is what we ended up in. And he was able to see it without even being able to spell out the mechanisms of like the design of the communists and this and that. He was saying the reason why he said that God is dead and we killed him, like what he's referring to is like our concept of God that we had in that Christian German era. And it died because of modernity and science. It didn't die because we
The
became too
age of
decadent.
reason.
It died because we entered the age of reason. So what he said, what he was addressing is that we have a great task at hand and we have to complete the task. That's my view. The task at hand is to come to terms with the new world that we entered into when we entered the age of reason. And the age of reason
Yeah.
and science and perspective that we have puts upon us a burden of solving this new task. The task, we used to solve that with God. We used to solve it with God, theology. And now we've entered a new age where that no longer does the trick, not on a societal scale, not on a civilizational scale. We're now in the area where God died. He's basically a myth. Some people adhere to him because there's good virtues and there's like, it makes for happy families and stuff, but it really isn't tenable on a grand scale. And we have not yet crested that horizon. We haven't gone over to the new land where we've determined what it is that we are now that God is in the past. And we are still in that age of nihilism. And he predicts on the other side of it, he calls it the Ubermensch, the Superman. So we're like in that chasm moment. where we have to discover for us who we are and what we're about and create a new identity that's not rooted in
Yeah,
the one
that's
that the
a dude.
Jews gave us.
I gotta stop you for a second, dude. You've been going on and on and on. But yeah, so I mentioned the Age of Reason, and that's like what, with the French Revolution, they were protesting against tyrannical kings that believed in the philosophical idea of the divine right of kings. That was a biblical concept, and there was a lot of philosophers in that time period that were borrowing from the philosophical concepts that were found in the Bible to run governments. And actually, America's justice system is a lot of it. The legalese is all based off of um, lexicons that were developed by Christian authors, like William Blackstone, who was a Christian, and he defined legal terms and the idea of liberty and justice for all.
Yeah,
Right.
like
We
our
basically
entire
have a
legal
Roman Senate
system
with
is
biblical laws or
our entire
biblical
legal
morality.
system is built upon a Christian foundation. But this is the thing, right? This is it's just a propaganda talking point that basically the dichotomy is science or creationism, and that because we learned so much more and we made such giant scientific and technological leaps that it forced God out the door because it's the only logical conclusion because science basically disproves God. And there's this dichotomy. That's totally incorrect. And Werner Heisenberg actually has like a famous quote that sums that up very well. The first gulp, it's like the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. And that is incredibly true. The more that we have discovered, the more it has become abundantly clear
I
that there is
agree.
intelligent design, like even at the quantum scale. And so, like, and that's why I brought up natural law. What actually happens is people think they're pseudo intellectuals whenever they make the claim that basically science is opposed to creationism, because it's just this talking point we've all been fed. It's propaganda. In the Catholic Church, religion versus
But I didn't bring
science,
up
and blah, 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 blah.
creationism.
No, well, that's what, okay, yeah, but the point is that what's actually needed, it's not specific to Christianity, although I would say that's obviously the better option because that isn't what America is technically built upon. Although it was built upon Christianity, the actual foundations do not specify that it needs to be Christianity. But what is absolutely important is a linear code of ethics and objective morality. There's an objective moral code. It had to be created, right? You don't have laws without a lawmaker or an author, okay? And that's why very quickly, but for example, true intellectuals that have a true grasp of natural sciences, they turn into creationists. And if not, they have such an imposed philosophical bias that they just can't accept what the evidence says. The first law, and I'm going to do this very quickly. The first law of thermodynamics, matter and energy cannot be created nor destroyed. Okay. So, how did all the matter and energy get here? Option A is something that is outside of natural law, not limited to natural law. So, supernatural did create matter and energy to make it be here. Option two is it was always here. That's just a true dichotomy. There's no other option. Because if matter and energy cannot be created, destroyed, but we do have matter and energy here, either A, something that is not limited by natural law made it, or B, it was just always here. Okay, let's say it was always here. So now we don't need a God. Okay, now we get to the second law, and it's that entropy will increase, systems seek equilibrium, right? Entropy will always increase. So then what that means is because systems are always seeking equilibrium, they're using energy to do that. So the net amount of usable energy is always decreasing. Okay. So if it's always decreasing, that means it has to be decreasing from a beginning point. You can't progress infinitely. You can't have an infinite regression. So that means there was a beginning. If there was a beginning, right? And even Stephen Hawking has a famous quote about this, built off of Arthur Eddington, right? Which is that an analogy is human progression. If you believe in evolution, we had to start from something to evolve. You can't have evolved unless you had a starting point. Same thing with if the usable energy is decreasing as a starting point. So now we have to have a beginning using the second law of thermodynamics, which is the most bulletproof natural law. Like Arthur Eddington said, many people will say, "Oh,
There's a
well, if
huge
your
problem
theory
with that.
doesn't." If your
Huge
theory
problem.
if your theory doesn't agree with certain things, it's okay. We find out that our understanding is wrong. And so that's fine. But if your theory or idea doesn't agree with the second law of thermodynamics, you're in big trouble. You might as well just
Can you
give it
tell
up
me
and hang
what
it up.
the law of thermodynamics is? It's a
Yeah, it's
huge
that
problem
it
with the way you're reciting it.
wait, why?
It's referring to a closed system.
No, it's not. First of all, it's not only a closed system. Why would the second law not apply to an open system?
Because it literally does. It's a closed system is like a refrigerator. Like the heat always goes, um, you know, it goes to the cooler, right? Because it's like transferring heat in the closed system. But in an open system, you can always increase and decrease entropy. Like you can add and subtract entropy, energy, order in an open system.
Okay, so you're saying
That's
the
referring
second
to
law of
only a closed system.
thermodynamics only applies to closed systems. Does the second law of thermodynamics apply to Earth?
Oh,
In what way? Yeah, it applies to everything, but it doesn't. You can't claim that to the universe because you don't know the nature of the universe, whether or not it's open or closed.
Yeah,
it
but
applies to
So you
everything.
can't
have to
extrapolate
say,
that back to a causality.
I do.
if
It's
you're saying
closed.
it only works for closed systems, then and it applies to Earth, you have to say Earth is a closed system. That obviously doesn't work for the globe.
Yeah. Okay. So it totally works for Earth, in what way? What do you mean? But
So it
you
works on
can't use
non-closed
it.
systems as
You
well, right?
well, in what way is the Earth a non-closed system? What do you mean?
Because we exchange matter,
So is the Earth always cooling
rockets,
off?
asteroids.
Is the Earth always cooling?
Do
Is
you
it colder
understand?
here?
It has to be an open system, though.
So is the Earth always losing organization, or is it becoming more
I don't know,
organized?
Witsit. I don't want to derail your whole thing here,
So
but
my point is, if you're going to extrapolate all the way back to the causality of the universe, you can't say whether or not the universe is a closed or open system. So you can't invoke that law. That's my problem.
Okay. So this is pretty simple. It's well known, right? Like, so if you're talking, the only way that anyone could ever say that it doesn't apply to a closed system, I'm guessing that you heard that somewhere. What that's actually in reference to is that it's the mathematical equation. And if you use S and you try to apply it to an open system, then it doesn't hold mathematically. But whenever you're actually say when you're using S in the equation and you're applying that to like the entropy of the universe, then it always holds, whether or not you're considering an open or closed system. Okay, so this is well known that the amount of usable energy in the universe is decreasing. Okay, because the system is seeking equilibrium at all times, and I mean obviously it is. That's what everything is doing. So like to claim that the second law doesn't apply to the universe doesn't even make sense, right?
But the
Because like
usable energy
the
is
constituent
decreasing,
parts, the
but
constituent parts
energy
of the
can't be
universe do
destroyed.
adhere to the second law, such as the Earth. And in your paradigm, there's other planets, stars, whatever it is. The second law applies to all of those things, but it doesn't apply to the whole, right? It doesn't make any sense. All the constituent parts are adhering to the second law. So the overall system, whether you think it's open, closed, infinitely expanding, whatever, it adheres to the second law. The amount of usable energy is decreasing. The entire universe, even in your paradigm, is constantly undergoing a process of seeking equilibrium. That's in fact why you claim there is expansion in the first place, right? Like that's the primary cause of expansion in your paradigm. That's why you claim that objects even do revolve around each other because they're trying to seek equilibrium, and there's a force that's not a force, can be thought of like a force that's causing them to move around each other. The very motion itself in the universe is due to the second law that the systems are seeking equilibrium. So now,
So
and
my
the reason that
answer,
you're trying to duck it is because you realize that obviously the implications are that if the second law does apply to the universe and it requires a beginning, and we go back to our first question, which is if matter cannot be created nor destroyed, how did it get here? Either A, it was created, or B, it was always here. Well, if there's a beginning, it couldn't have always been here, which means we're now left with the singular viable option of a supernatural force, meaning not limited to the laws of nature, something outside of that, creating the
right?
matter.
So I'm going from your first premise that like you conceded. Okay, let's for the sake of argument, accept premise A, which is that the universe is eternal, right? I think you led to that as an option. If there was no beginning, then it's
Yeah, it
eternal.
seems like the only option to
So
not have a creator. Yeah.
so again, so then that would mean that at what we call the beginning, if there was a big bang or something like that, what we have is a state of absolute order. It's a uniform expansion of energy into disorder. And what we have in the form of stars and planets and gas clouds and stuff, this is actually disordered. So the swirling of the spheres would be less orderly than a uniform expansion of perfect energy. So it is decaying into disorder, which would represent what we would call the order of the harmony of the spheres if they were spiraling and orbiting each other and stuff. And what appears in an orderly way, it's actually less orderly than a uniform expansion of pure energy. So it has decayed into disorder. But what we don't know is if that's an eternal loop, which would be not closed. If there's no close, infinity is an unclosed loop. So we have an open system, essentially eternally open, meaning that it could expand into absolute disorder, which ultimately causes it to decay so far that it collapses into itself and then expands again perfectly orderly. So we don't know the nature of the origin of this expansion and collapse cycle that we could be in infinitely, which would be open. So
It
everything
being
within
eternal.
it is. Go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were done. It being
So, yeah.
eternal is not an option, though. That doesn't work because of the second law of thermodynamics.
Exactly.
We'll get to
I
That
don't know
just
if you know do you know the equation for it? It's ds divided by dt is greater than 0. And so ds is a small change in entropy, and dt is a small change in time. So change in entropy divided by change in time is always greater than 0. Entropy will always increase.
infinitely.
And yes, well, yes, there is no limitation to it. The entropy will always increase relative to the variables at play, right? Because
So at
systems
some
are
point that
always
becomes something that becomes doesn't it eventually leave the graph and go to how so if it's always more than 0, wouldn't it eventually decay so far that it couldn't decay anymore? What would
it's
be
not
left to decay if it just
decay.
always decays?
Well, no,
The
that's
order.
the
If
point.
the
Yeah,
order is
yeah.
decaying, that's entropy.
See, the whole like second law is just about order and chaos is like a very rudimentary misnomer. This is well known, like in the higher levels of academia. But the point is that yes, if it were decreasing, for example, then yeah, it couldn't just go forever because that would be an infinite regress fallacy, right? It couldn't just literally go forever. So the necessary implication of that is that eventually the universe would end. But this is well accepted in your paradigm, and this is why you have a Big Bang, which
It would
is
end in
by
essentially a
definition,
singularity.
a Big Bang by definition is a beginning. Okay. And
Precisely.
so,
And the end would also be a beginning.
time out. If there's a beginning, then that means it couldn't have always been here. That would be a paradox. So if there's a beginning, then it wasn't always here. So now when
Right.
we
So
go to
the
the first
beginning is an
law,
apparent beginning, just like a sunrise is apparent. The sun was always shining. It didn't start shining in the morning, even though the day starts in the morning, but it was never,
that's not
it never
analogous at
stopped being.
all. That's an
Totally.
optical
It
phenomenon.
perfectly is.
No, it's not. That's an
So would
apparent
a beginning
optical
and an
phenomenon.
end be an optical phenomenon? Well,
How
not
so?
it would be an apparent phenomenon. It would
No, it would
appear
be a
as though
real
something
physical
started, but it would be a continuation of what was.
it would be a real physical phenomena, right? Because there was a beginning, which means that before that there wasn't the matter and energy. Now, in your paradigm, it
Well, the
doesn't make
same way
any
there's
sense.
a physical phenomenon of light hitting the ground where it used to be dark in the morning. We call that day. It's starting, but that's actually just light is becoming to be where there wasn't light. So that's a
Yes,
physical
but dude,
phenomenon, but we demark it as the beginning of the day. So the physical phenomenon at the singularity at the beginning of time would be the same as the singularity at the end of quote unquote time.
this is pretty simple. If you're claiming that the beginning, so the Big Bang, actually wasn't the beginning, it's an apparent beginning, it's an illusion, and it's
Right.
just cycling back. Okay, where was everything at before the Big Bang?
At the place that it was just before that.
Yo,
So
And
you're
somehow
talking
there's
about a
what about the
reversible. You're talking about a reversible process. That's not even. That's like hypothetical, theoretical. That's not even
yeah,
a real thing.
it's not even the popular academic claim to get out of
you,
this problem, by the way. The popular claim is multiverse. They claim a multiverse. Okay, and that because it's like the
That's
answer to the
essentially what I'm
fine-tuning
saying.
problem. Well, you're not claiming a multiverse. What you're claiming is like the crunch theory, basically, which is that it just constantly loops back in and back out, back in and back out, and that is perpetual, which does fundamentally violate the second law, right?
you'd have
Modern
to.
academia, but dude, I just want to make sure. Can we drive from the conclusion here? Okay, if the usable energy is always decreasing, then it denotes a beginning, because obviously it can't just decrease forever, because that would be infinite regression. And also, it can't decrease without a beginning point to decrease from. And this is why Stephen Hawking is famously quoted as saying, like, one thing we now know definitively, although disputed throughout the ages, is that the universe absolutely had to have a beginning because of the second law. And then he quotes Arthur Eddington saying, You know, you can have all kinds of theories that maybe don't seem to match observations and evidence at the time because we always learn more. But if it goes against the second law, it's inadmissible. It can't be true. And I'm not appealing to the authority of Stephen Hawking or anything. I'm just making a point that he's obviously like heralded as some like genius scientific hero in your paradigm. And even he, who is famously also quoted as saying, "There is no God," was forced to acknowledge intellectually that there had to be a beginning to the universe. Now, okay, now we'll actually just keep this concise here. Now we go back to the first question. If there is in fact a beginning, we go back to our first question, which is matter and energy cannot be created nor destroyed. What does that mean? It can only be transferred, it can only be exchanged.
Could I ask you a
Okay.
question right on that one? I know you're going to go somewhere with
Yeah.
that, but you've mentioned several times, and I agree with you, the idea that available energy is always decreasing. But we know that it's not getting destroyed. It's just transforming.
Transferring.
So available energy is transforming or transferring itself into something else that we don't call usable energy. So it's actually just the universe is transforming from one thing to another.
Well, yeah, this now invokes like the necessary
From one state
requirement
to
of
another
something
state.
outside of the material world, which very coherently, you know, glides right into this other implication, which is the antecedent of something supernatural. So, like, if energy is always decreasing, because that's basically what we're saying, like, where's it going? Well, something outside the material world, apparently, right? So, if the amount of usable energy is always decreasing, there had to be a beginning. So now our first question was, well, if matter and energy cannot be created nor destroyed, how did the matter and energy in the universe get here? And we only have two options of the true dichotomy. Unless someone can offer a third viable option, I've never heard one.
Yo,
Option
real quick,
A.
I was gonna say. I
Hold
thought you
on,
were
because
done.
I'm waiting to read something after Witsit
All
goes
right.
or the guy responds or something.
Well, let's get
Okay.
a line going. Who wants to
So
go next?
so I'm just gonna I'll fall back after this. Okay, but I'm just bringing it back full circle. So option A is that it was created. Now that violates the first law, which means that whatever is violating the first law is obviously supernatural, which is by definition, it's attributed to a force not limited by the laws of nature. Okay, so yeah, if it created matter or energy, then it is supernatural by definition. It's beyond the restraints of natural law. Okay, so something supernatural created the matter and energy. That's option A. Option B is it wasn't created because it was always here. We've now eliminated that option with the second law. That option isn't viable. So now we're only left with the first one. Okay, so now we have a supernatural causal agent that created the matter and energy in the universe. Now here is the home run final question here then. Because we need something that's external to the material universe. We need something that seemingly isn't limited to time, and we need something that is attributed to a force outside the laws of nature, so supernatural. So the question is then, of course, okay, if something supernatural created the matter and energy here, what is the antecedent, meaning the necessary requirement? What is the antecedent of creation?
You want me to say creator?
Well, I want you to just answer the question,
I
and that
think
is the answer.
Yeah, I know. But what you've
Right.
set up
So
is a word concept fallacy.
what? No, it's not. No, what are you talking about? I'm saying we are now, the whole first law is about the creation or lack of creation of matter and energy. It's matter and energy cannot be created or destroyed. So now we figured out that applying the first and second law, the matter and energy in the universe had to be created. So then what's the necessary antecedent to creation? And the answer
You're
is a
starting off
creator.
with energy cannot be created or destroyed. Energy was created. You're making
That's
that
what I'm
claim.
saying. Energy
You're
cannot be
saying
created
it
nor
was
destroyed.
created, but we are also saying that it can't be created.
Yes, that's the whole point. Matter
Yo, can I
cannot
get
be
in?
created. Yeah, one more time. Matter
So
cannot
let's
be
just leave it at
created.
that. It can't be
Just
created.
one more.
Well,
Just
no.
one more
Well,
time. Matter
So it's
cannot
not.
be created. Matter
It's not
cannot be
created.
Matter cannot be created nor destroyed. That's a
So
natural
it's not.
law.
So it's
But
not
how
created.
did all the matter and energy get here? Second law says it had
It's
to have a
here.
beginning, which means that something that isn't limited to that natural law, something that can violate that natural law, which means it would be supernatural, had to actually create it. The antecedent to creation is a creator. The first and second law prove that there is a creator, and there's no way around it logically.
Yeah, I've been
yeah, real quick. Hold on,
atheism
dude. I've been trying to get in, bro. This is crazy. But yeah, I just want to mention that this is all based off of precepts, right? Our guessing,
Yes.
our assumptions on how the universe began, or if it was eternal or whatever. Now we have theological reasoning for this belief that there was a beginning, Bereshit, Genesis. We also, Witsit, I think that entropy might be a sign of the beginning of death and decay, but not necessarily the beginning of existence. You get what I'm saying? Based off, Romans 1, Romans 13.
Are you
Entropy
done?
is a no, I'm not. I'm only, dude, I'm just trying to get in, dude. I'm scratching the surface. But I'm just trying to get him to respond to that.
Well,
Then I'm
my
gonna go
position is
next, or
contrary to that.
So entropy, death, atrophy is a byproduct of a heavenly rebellion that occurred, right? Or even according to Romans and Genesis, death is a byproduct of Adam's sin entering. That's what happened with the world, bro. We got a fractured reality that we're living in right now. And what we see as energy being released and becoming less usable is a gradual decay, a gradual decline of order, like our fellow here was saying. And I just wanted to say that. And I think he has a misunderstanding of your position too, because he thinks that energy came from nowhere, or that matter just came from nowhere, just popped up like spontaneous generation. And that's not the case. It was brought forth from the eternal, the non-contingent prime mover, the source of all life, right? That we know as God. Reality was brought forth from him, but he's still external to it based off of Newton's first law, the law of inertia, right? An
I think
object
we get
that rests
this.
must. All right, so you guys
This
get
is
all that.
one
Go
view.
ahead.
This
Go
one,
ahead.
what I'm saying is that what you're setting up
Well,
is a
hold on.
false.
Jeremy was next. Jeremy was next.
Well, I didn't get to
no,
respond
let
to
him go
Witsit,
because
but-
All right,
yeah.
cool. He yielded the mic. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks. So what I'm saying is that this is a false dilemma, an overgeneralization, God of the gaps, argument from ignorance. We're saying since we don't know how everything could have come into existence, God must have brought it into existence, which is the same way of saying what's the antecedent of creator. So we're assuming everything must be quote unquote created, even though we also have this paradoxical claim that energy can't be created. So energy can't be created or destroyed. But then we jump to the leap of, well, it must have been created because it's here. Well,
Yeah, we're not saying it's
creating
not
up
a
a false
God.
dilemma where the dilemma is either it was created or it was or there's no other answer. Like we don't know
What?
if there was a creator. We don't know if it had to be created. Again, you already brought up multiverse. We don't know what a quantum fluctuation does. It's like the saying since we don't know how it came into being, it must have been created by a supernatural being.
Well,
No,
either it was
God of the gaps
created
no.
or it
argument.
was.
It's a
No,
false
Jeremy, go
dilemma.
ahead. Jeremy, go ahead. I'll respond to all the claimed fallacies.
Yeah, we're laying down how nature works, like the thermodynamics thing. That's like just how nature works. And in order for something to violate that, it would have to be above and beyond the laws of nature. So, like Witsit said, it'd have to be supernatural. We're not just saying, oh, it's got to be a creator. We're saying based on the mainstream scientific models of how the
Right. We
laws
haven't yet
that
found anything
dictate.
that violates this law, is a way of saying that.
Witsit just ran you through it, though. He just ran you through it, and
No,
you
I'm
were
agreeing.
like
We
trying to
haven't
say
yet
Earth
found
was a
anything
closed
that violates
system.
this law, what we call the first law of thermodynamics.
Yes.
don't
So
know
what
anything
he
that
laid
violates it.
out. So what he laid out means there has to be a creator, because you
That's
can't
a
violate that.
non sequitur.
What? That's the whole
What?
argument.
But okay, so logically, if we say that that's absolutely true for all time in every single place forever, which we can't lay claim to that, if that were true, then ipso facto, then we could also then say, then there must have been a prime mover cause. But we don't know that. We can't lay claim to that. What we have is a law that we haven't seen any violation of.
That's
We
not an
operate
argument.
as a scientific principle. So scientifically principled logic, we're doing a logic leap here where we're saying since we don't know of anything that violates this law, it must hold true for all places, all time, forever, in all circumstances. But we don't actually know that.
You're not formulating
Go
an
ahead. Let
argument
Witsit
or a
respond. You
rebuttal
just went.
because
You just went, bro. Let
all right,
Witsit respond.
all right.
All right. So, appeal to ignorance is where you shift the burden of proof away from the person making the claim and basically say that something is true or false because there is no evidence to the contrary. That isn't actually my formulation of my argument at all.
It's true
I
or
didn't say
false.
appeal to ignorance. I said argument from ignorance.
My bad.
Okay. You said appeal to ignorance, but anyway, argument from ignorance also isn't what's going on at all. It's actually built specifically upon Not never at one point did I appeal to ignorance or argue from ignorance. But you also said it was a false dilemma. And then you didn't even articulate what the alleged false dilemma is, but that's also known as a false binary, a false dichotomy, whatever. So you're saying I'm claiming that it's either that it was created or, and then you didn't finish it. But yes, I am claiming a dichotomy. I'm claiming that how was matter created? Our matter cannot be created or destroyed. So how is the matter energy here? I'm saying either A, it was always here, or B, it was created and that requires something outside of the laws of nature, not limited to natural law. So for you to claim that it's a
Or
false
third
dilemma,
option.
to claim that it's a false dilemma,
Is there no
you
third
need to
option?
wait up. To claim it's a false dilemma, you have to offer a third viable. You have to actually articulate. You
trying
can't
to
just
do.
vaguely appeal to possibility of there being a third option, which is what you're actually doing. That's what atheists always end up doing. I'm not even saying you're atheist. I'm saying that's what atheists always end up doing. They appeal to possibilities. They say there's probably some scenario or something that I can't articulate that's possible that would happen. And then they also appeal to incredulity. They say, well, I don't understand it, or
Are
I
they
don't
in the
understand
room
how
with you
this could
now, or
work, or
can
how
I
a doc-"
respond?
Well, articulate a third viable option to claim that it's a false dichotomy.
Okay, well, there's no what I would say is that there's no difference in me saying there's a possibility that there's something that we don't know that's at play. There's no difference in me between me saying that and you saying there must be a supernatural deity that did it, because you can't invoke that, you can't demonstrate it, you can't show it to me. It's literally an appeal to possibility. Possibly there's a God. You're doing the appeal to
No.
Dude, can
possibility.
I get in, dude? Because this guy is just, he doesn't understand the philosophical like principles that are involved with first of all, you got Copernicus principle, you got Occam's razor, right? You can borrow from our philosophy and your model, right? And establish a beginning with the Big Bang, even though that's a presupposition. And then you go and hypocritically say that we are using a precept. You see what you're saying?
No.
Or you're not so you're accusing us of a precept, of affirming the consequence, or maybe no, you said what'd you just say? My bad, dude. I've been drinking a little
False
bit.
dichotomy.
No, you the last thing you just said.
All right, take 5 after this. If
No,
you
no,
want.
Appeal to
dude, hold on.
possibility.
Appeal to possibility. Nah,
Last
you
thing I
said
said.
something else, bro. You're accusing us of all kinds of stuff. But one thing I want to say real quick, bro, is that either way, you can't use a presuppositional fallacy against us, or assuming the beginning, right, with God as the prime mover, because in your model it's just random chance, chaos. That's equally as fallacious, just to randomly assume that it's just due to chaos or probabilistic chance alone. You understand that? And then if you start breaking it down, if you start breaking it down inductively, right, using rational thinking, when you look at and evaluate reality in nature, even DNA and the complexity and the fine tuning argument, you start realizing that the argument's on our side, the logic's on our side. If you start, using process of elimination and, irreducible complexity, these things display evidence for a divine architect. What's your evidence for random chance creating a hominid, even the simplest of hominids? Go ahead.
Take 5, Lion.
We've moved the goalpost to me proving that hominids could randomly evolve.
Yeah, so
No,
let me real
listen.
fast. Let me
Go ahead
real
with
fast.
it.
I think breaking down the logic here is what actually is required. It's like the prerequisite to understanding the actual magnitude of this argument and how it's inescapable and irrefutable. Okay, so to claim that it's a false dilemma, right, is to claim that there's a third viable option. It's also known as a false dichotomy, right? So it's like, yes, I am claiming a dichotomy. All you have to do to show it's a false dilemma or false binary, false dichotomy, it's also all or nothing, right? Fallacy, all same thing. All you have to do is articulate a third viable option. And so when you did that, you said that there's possibly something that we just don't know yet. Now, ironically, that is literally a textbook argument from ignorance or appeal to ignorance, which, by the way, are also the same thing. Because you like clarified the distinction there. I didn't say appeal to ignorance. I said argument from ignorance. Those are literally the same thing. And it's just saying again that something is likely true because there's no evidence to the contrary. And then what you're doing fundamentally is an appeal to possibility, which is another logical fallacy where someone argues that something's true or likely right? Just because it's possible. And you're actually not even articulating what
That's
that
what you're
possibility
doing.
is.
You're saying it's
No,
possible God did it,
my argument is based
which is
on a
not a viable
logical
option.
my argument is a logical necessary antecedent. I haven't invoked any characteristics of a god or even used the word God. I haven't said that his name is this, that he acts this way, nothing like that. The only thing that I've
So
said is that there is now there actually this can keep progressing, by the way, and there actually are very specific
but you've
requirements.
called it a creator.
Yes, because literally the necessary antecedent to creation is a creator. So what atheists normally do is they dispute you. They say
A
you're
thing
just
that creates.
assuming, you're saying that you're assuming that this is a creation. But I am not doing that in this argument whatsoever. What I'm saying is provably applying the first and second law, right? The only way to address the fact there is matter and energy here is to say that there's something that isn't limited to that law. Something can defy that law. A force that is not attributed to the laws of nature, that is attributed to something beyond the laws of nature, more specifically. So that is by
Yeah.
definition
So
supernatural.
you're
That's what it means. Supernatural means beyond natural, beyond nature. So it's a force
right.
attributed to, okay, it's attributed to a force beyond the laws of nature. So
And we don't
therefore,
know anything
necessary
about that.
antecedent.
So that's an appeal to possibility. Possibly there's a thing that's
What do you
beyond
mean we don't know?
normalcy.
We don't need to know anything about like the only way that I would be stepping into fallacies is if I started making specific claims about the characteristics of that creator. Okay, but I'm not doing that.
Well,
I'm just
the
saying what
claim
we
is
do
that
know.
it has the capacity to create things into existence.
What we know, what I'm saying is provably there is no option. Something that is not some force that is outside the laws of nature had to create the matter and energy here because the first and second law dictate that. And if you're claiming that that isn't true, right? Then you need to articulate a viable option. But no one can ever do that. There is no third viable option because it's a true dichotomy. Either
No,
the
I
matter and
think
energy was always
I
here,
disagree.
either the matter and
Because I'll
energy
give
was
you one.
always here,
I'll bite the bullet.
or something violated the first law. There is no other option.
I'll bite the bullet. I will say that just as viable as saying that there's something outside of nature that's supernatural that brings nature into existence from non-nature. So there's something outside, a transcendental category outside of nature where there's nothing, makes something from nothing. That's a claim that you're saying is possible. And in fact, it's like a logical inevitability. And I would say that this claim that I'm about to make is just as possible as that, which is literally supernatural. So we're appealing to supernature, beyond nature, outside of normalcy. This would also be supernatural outside of normalcy, but it doesn't require a creator. The idea that this doesn't exist at all, that matter energy is actually literally just illusion that doesn't actually exist, which explains why this apparent existence isn't real. So therefore, there's no need to bring things into existence because it doesn't exist.
Dude, what? That's your third option.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, it's like solipsism. You cannot know that anything exists.
Solipsism,
even yourself.
virtual paradigm, like the idea that we are in some sort of like simulation paradigm. Like, does the world that Minecraft Steve in, does that world exist? No, it's an
It had a
Yes,
creator,
this is
though.
literally
the blocks don't
But it
exist.
had a
The
creator,
dragon
though. The
doesn't
Minecraft
exist.
world, it had a
But the
creator.
world itself doesn't exist. So from within the Minecraft world paradigm, you cannot determine a creator because there's no existence. You can't use the
so. This
physics
is
and logic of
literally
Minecraft to prove that Minecraft was created.
this is literally the most egregious form of an appeal to ignorance, which is claiming that you cannot know anything. Okay, and it's like literally the definition of appeal to ignorance. You cannot know
No,
anything.
it's that you can't. There might be limits to our knowledge. Is actually what I'm humbly admitting.
No,
And
no,
you're
no.
saying
That's
since
not what
we
you're
don't know,
saying.
since we don't know where everything came from, we can know that everything came from somewhere. And I'm saying since we don't know where everything
Yeah.
came from, we just don't know.
No, see, this is what I'm saying. So another appeal to ignorance. And this is the point that I'm making though, actually, because people always, and we can wrap this up, people always like atheists are typically very cocky and arrogant. I think that they have the intellectual superior position. They say stuff like sky daddy, blah, blah, blah. They have the logically bankrupt position. And when they actually sit at the table, and this is why none of these people actually ever debate creationism with someone that knows what they're talking about. Because every time they actually show good faith and entertain the argument, which hats off to you, you did do that, you always end up in the same place. There's been no exception. I've done this probably 300 times. You always get to where the person on the other side has to just baselessly appeal to possibilities, appeal to ignorance, start appealing to
But
solipsism.
I've shown that that's what you're doing.
No, that's not what I'm doing,
You're
because
hitting
I'm
the
saying
possibilities, supernatural possibilities.
no, we provably know that there is matter and energy here. Your position has devolved to such an extent that you say that isn't true.
No, you
So you're
provably
arguing
know that that's what you're experiencing.
what? No,
You
there's
don't
matter and energy
provably
here.
know that.
I don't know that matter exists.
Well, you don't know what matter is. Can you tell me that? Can you tell me the thing that exists? What is it?
It's a tangibility, a substance.
Oh, experienceability, tangible. You can touch it, so you can sense it.
Yes.
So,
No,
so you
yeah,
have
but
senses.
it's independent of me touching it.
And how can you confirm that? Do you have experience outside yourself?
Yeah, because you can go over there and do it. All right.
And how do
So
you? So you can experience me doing it.
no, you can experience it.
So I can do it, and I can tell you I did it, and then you go,
Dude,
"Oh, it's something outside
this
me
is what I'm
did it."
saying. And think about this. People are so devoted to the idea there's no creator that they will just completely devolve into this world of not like you can know nothing. If I
It's
put a Rubik's
solipsism.
cube, if I put a Rubik's cube in a room and I lock it, I don't need to go, you don't have to go in that room and touch it for it to exist. Maybe for you to know that it's there, for you to confirm that it's there, but it's there whether or not that room ever gets unlocked. It doesn't matter what you know or what you experience. That Rubik's cube, which is made of matter, is sitting in that room, bro. And and this I will say is the only way out, quote unquote, out against this argument, right? Is to actually even just outright deny the existence of matter and energy, and to deny the second law of thermodynamics applies to the universe, and to just basically claim there must be something that none of us can possibly understand that exists in a place that doesn't adhere to the second law, but it isn't a creator, it isn't supernatural, which doesn't make any sense because it's not adherent to the second law, and you just start having to kind of double speak and claiming that something is outside the second law, but it's not
What I'm saying,
supernatural, and blah
but
blah
you're
blah.
claiming something that's outside the second law.
Yes, but I am saying, of course,
Yes,
if it's
thank you.
outside, the difference is I'm acknowledging that if it's outside of the second law, it is by definition supernatural. Do you agree with that?
Yes,
It would have to be.
Okay, so now if it's supernatural and it's outside the second law, and we need that to satisfy the question of how is there matter and energy in the universe? Because it can't be created nor destroyed according to natural law. Now we have something supernatural, so we fix that problem. Now it can be created. Okay, created is an action. So, what is the requirement for that action? What is the antecedent, the necessary antecedent of creation? And everyone knows the answer is a creator. So now we are left logically not with religion, not with any bias. He could be malevolent for all I care. Doesn't matter right now. It's that there's no way out of it, that there is a supernatural, external creator that created the matter and energy in the universe. There is
Talk to
no
him.
other option. You can say you hate him. You can say he's an alien. You can say it's not a him. You can say that it doesn't, you can try to argue that it doesn't have intelligence or consciousness. I would definitely win that debate as well. But the point is that on the surface, we have to acknowledge an external supernatural creator. That's my point. And my point is that the vast majority of people that think that they're atheists or whatever, they've never even thought of this. They've never heard this argument. They've never even thought of it. They don't know anything about it.
That shit's
Okay, and that's
fire.
yeah, it's like it's lethal.
no, I'm with you. The thing is that those people aren't in the room right now, and so there's a lot of this as we're listening to you tell me about how the conversations you've had with other people. Well, I'm trying to have a conversation with you.
Or are you
And it's
saying
sort
that
of like,
you were
Dude,
very
what?
familiar
He's
with this
talking about the
argument before?
laws.
yeah, I've
He's
had
talking
this
about the laws
conversation
and
with you
stuff, dude.
on the timeline. I literally can bring the tweet up.
Okay. So before
Um,
you heard it from me, did you know about it?
yes, you're not the
Oh,
yeah, yes. This isn't my
okay.
first rodeo.
You've heard the
Um,
argument about the first and second law combined prove a creator before.
yep.
No friggin' way.
Yeah,
Where?
Okay.
When? When?
look,
Receipts.
When?
all right.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding,
Okay,
dude.
you know what? What's it? You invented that one. Is that what you're claiming? That you
No,
you came to it on
I'm
your
not
own?
claiming I invented it. I'm claiming it is like very rarely put forth. I didn't hear someone else say it. I'm not claiming that I invented it. I'm saying I've never heard someone articulate it the specific way I am, but I'm sure it definitely has been. And I learned it by reading stuff such as even Stephen Hawking acknowledging that there had to be a beginning. You know, that was the reasoning behind the title to his book, his famous book, right? Like Yeah, like he makes a very valid point that can't be denied. So even the most staunch atheist in the world, who again famously was quoted as saying there is no God, and then he died, and God said there is no Stephen Hawking. But he
Yeah,
said
but my
he
point is like,
acknowledged.
yeah, but this idea has been grappled with for even before we had understanding of these laws. I mean, it was like cognito ergo
Yeah, for sure,
sum.
for sure.
It's like
Because there are all kinds of other arguments for a creator. The fact that we're even
it's essentially what we're
philosophizing.
we're just rehashing in a different way with different terminology. The idea is there, like, what is cause and effect? Essentially, was there a prime mover? What's if things are happening because of a cause? What's the initial cause? It's like it's
But
all
do you remember
basically
what started this topic
breaking
though?
down
The
the same
reason
thing.
that this Yeah, but do you remember why specifically this argument came up? The argument came up because you basically kind of painted this picture of a dichotomy between science and religion, right? And that we hit the age of reason and we now have to find some type of remedy to progress as a society where we can maintain some type of order without a
Yes,
God. And
and then
and
you
like
pivoted into creationism, and I'm saying what
that's what
we're
God is.
okay. Well, to you, but
What?
uh, eh, but what Nietzsche was writing about was in the context of his time, which was Christian Germany. We were talking about a
No,
Christian
sure,
paradigm. So when he said
sure.
God died, he didn't say the idea of a creator died. That's not what we were
Yes,
talking
that
about.
is
So
what he's
these
saying. That's the
no,
context
he's
of
not
what he's
he was not
saying.
talking about the existential nature of reality. He was talking about our paradigm of worldview where we have a lawgiver who's watching us and has virtuous rules for our living. And we have a law that we adhere to with sin and death because of sin, and this whole mythological paradigm that was given to us by the Jews or whatever. From that paradigm, this idea of a monotheistic creator who has interest in our lives and who has like
Mhm.
there's like a messianic worldview and all this stuff. He was talking when he was literally talking about that God. He wasn't
The
saying
context, no, that's not
we've
true.
disproved the idea that universe came from anywhere.
The
He wasn't
context
saying
of
that.
his quote and his point does not require a specific religious expression. He is writing from within the context of that religion in his environment, but that it wasn't his point. His overall point is that that problem will only become exacerbated, meaning that the more that we learn, the more science progresses, the less and less viable that this idea of God will be interpreted as being, and that we need to
No.
go ahead and get out. Yes, that we need to go ahead and get
Well, I
out
don't know. Have
ahead
you
of the fact.
actually read Nietzsche? Like, I don't know if you understand though. I mean, it sounds like you don't really understand the
What do
paradigm
you
that
mean? I
he's
don't
expressing
understand.
philosophically.
That's literally the context
He
of what he
wasn't
said.
talking about the scientific understanding of whether or not there was a creator. He's talking
I
about
didn't say
the
that.
see, he's I invoked him with regard to our society, and I'm talking about social issues, and that's what he was writing about: the psychological nature of man. And the
Yes.
psychology of man has a God in his mind, and he's living his life under the gaze of God and an idea of what God is and what God wants from him. That's what he's writing about human psychology as a
Yeah.
philosopher. So he wasn't writing about the existential nature of the universe or whether or not there's a creator or a prime mover. He's talking about our relation to our lives in the world was a relating to the world through this paradigm of literally a Christian God. And he
And
wasn't
how it was
only
being
undermining that, but he
altered.
was saying that now that we're coming into the age of reason through modernity, we're going to encounter a paradox where we realize that this God concept we have is mythological. This
That's the
particular
point.
concept of
That's
God
the
that
point.
we have as a
Dude.
mythology, and as that veil gets lifted from our eyes, as we lose the
Oh
mythology, we're
man.
going to encounter the nature, the real. In fact, we might encounter the real God. Is
He
in
does not
fact
say
what he was
that.
getting at. The
No,
the
he doesn't say
idea
that at all.
well, he manifested it through the idea of the Ubermensch, which is that we are a manifestation of nature itself. And as we learn how to inflict our will to power in the world, that is a manifestation of nature's impulse. So we're actually going to discover God within man. He
There
lives
is
within us.
there is
That
some
it's
truth to
That's
merely
all that.
conceptual. That's
He's
merely
right about that.
conceptual. Yeah, yeah, no,
dude, read
dude,
Thus
he's
Spoke
just saying the
Zarathustra.
same
That's what
thing.
it's
He's
about.
just
He's
saying the
actually
same thing.
literally writing in mythological
Dude,
terms about this
dude,
concept.
dude, you're just saying the same thing I said, but claiming I was wrong. What I said was that the entire premise of his point is that when we enter the age of reason and modernity, thus this is obviously including scientific understanding, learning more about how things actually work as our knowledge base in general increases. And we hit the age of reason. That's what the age of reason freaking is, that we are going to learn that these primitive, archaic archetypes and concepts of God were actually just merely conceptual and internal. And we're
Right.
going to be faced with that dilemma. of having to actually maintain all the benefits that come with that archaic primitive belief or concept, right? While we're discovering that it was incorrect. Okay, that's
Yes.
exactly what I said though. What I'm saying is
Okay.
that okay, now this is the one reason that I said, do you remember where this started? Was I then pointed out, yeah, that's kind of, joined at the hip with this notion, this propaganda notion that science and like natural science and knowledge in general is opposed to belief in
Okay,
God.
before we go
Okay.
too far in that, so you don't have to reiterate that, because I actually totally agree with you. That's what I was acknowledging before when he predicted that we would go through the age of nihilism. Because right now we're in that part where you're calling it the propaganda idea, which is that science negates the idea of a creator. And
Yep.
so we're grappling with that right now. So right now, science basically washed away, Yahweh breathed it into existence over 7 days, and then separated the light from the darkness, and then he breathed into some dirt and made man, and man came out of the garden and stuff. So science is sort of like, wait a minute, it doesn't look like that's where humans come from. It looks like it's somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's not debunking whether or not everything came from nothing. It's like, is this
Sure.
mythological story about how God did it true or not? And science is destroying that. So now we're going through so science then attacks everything about God all the way down to the fundamentals, which gets us into postmodernism and gets us into this chaotic nihilism that we're in. And I'm trying to look toward a post-nihilistic age. And that's what he was talking about with this Ubermensch and stuff like that. So we have to rediscover, how do we live like we lived with this concept of God that got taken from us because it crumbled under our new discoveries. That doesn't mean there's no God, but that God is dead. And we
Okay.
sort of have to rediscover God. But
Big
we're
Tech,
going to
check this out.
rediscover a God that's different than the Jewish God.
Right. Okay. Now check this out. If your assertions that you just made were true, I would completely agree with you. And I would say, yes, we need to find out a way to get out ahead of it so we can still instill a lot of the beneficial aspects of religion and these archaic beliefs in God, right, while still progressing scientifically so that we can deal with the realization that science has basically disproved it. The problem is, though, that these assertions that you're making actually aren't true. That was my entire point. And that's why I led with the quote from Heisenberg, which is again, that the first gulp from the glass of natural science will turn you into an atheist. But at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. And that's what I'm saying is you're kind of jumping over to just taking their word for it, this kind of like mainstream narrative that science has proven, for example, that man wasn't created in 7 days and da, da, da. Actually, science hasn't proven anything of the sort, right? All of their claims have actually been destroyed. The more we learn, it's like the age of the earth completely destroyed. Doesn't work at all.
All right. Well,
And I'm
now
not going to get into. I'm not. Listen,
yeah,
listen. I'm not
we're
going to
not
get
going
into
to
the
get into that.
specifics.
Yeah,
I don't want to get
because
into
the
the
Earth's
specifics.
actually flat and there's a dome.
I don't
Yeah,
know. No, nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with that. The missing sedimentary layers, the great unconformity, the actual radioisotopes, they've shown that it's impossible that they actually took as long to form as they said. They wouldn't even solidify at the proper rates. There's a million different things. Okay, my point is that as we do indeed progress scientifically, quantum has also done this. This is why most quantum physicists will now tell you at the least we exist in some type of simulation. Because the more we learn about the intrinsic metaphysical undertone of this place, right? This materialistic idea is becoming more and more nullified. Okay, and that was my entire point. And that's where we then get into an example of this is even a proper understanding of natural law. And that's why when Stephen Hawking says that that's a more modern realization. That's why he says, it's been long disputed whether or not there was a beginning of the universe or not. And it's been largely held that it was a viable option that there was not one and that it was infinite or perpetual. But we now know upon further understanding and discoveries in science of the second law, we now know actually that's not even viable. We waste our time, this entire time, for hundreds of years, philosophically disputing whether or not the universe is infinite or perpetual. We now know it actually couldn't be. Like the material universe couldn't be, right? Because of the universe. So that I brought the first and second law up as one of many examples of how actually the more we're learning about science, the more hilariously and ironically enough, the more it comes full circle and ends you back where these stupid primitive ancestors were
Well,
actually right. Although
to get
maybe
to the
you can
point,
argue their process to getting right was wrong, their conclusion was right. And that's what Heisenberg is talking about.
I mean, that's where we get to the point of like, it's big if true, and you might point me to the way you're interpreting some studies or findings that maybe the Earth's younger than they said before, or there's no there's no validity to an old Earth or to old humanity or anything like that. And so then we could, parse out those claims, but you're essentially making a big if true claim. If you're right about that, then that's huge. But
Sure, but that's why I went
that's
straight
sort of
to
a
the
story.
thermodynamics. I went straight to the thermodynamics thing because the rest of them require like in-depth conversations. I need to start sending you papers. I need to start, you know what I'm saying? Like to even talk about age of the universe, for example, that's a whole freaking thing. While the first and second law of thermodynamics, while it does take a few minutes to unpack, and normally there's some back and forth, and we end up hitting this wall of fallacies, it's much faster, it's much less disputed. Like no one really disputes that we know the first and second law. So we jump that hurdle of like all the time required to get to an agreement that, oh, that radioisotope is actually a real thing or whatever. So the only reason I brought that up is because I consider that the most efficient, right? The most
Yeah, I think
expedited path to acknowledging that conclusion. And there really is no rebuttal to that. We have to kind of jump in. And this is the last thing I'll say to you because I took over the VC. I get it. I'm going to ask you one more question though. Can you at least acknowledge though that like kind of the alternatives that you've put forth as like, ostensibly rebuttals to this argument about the first and second law, they are seemingly very unlikely and at the least like you're super uncertain of them and you can't really even articulate them, and so you have no true solid foundation at all at that point where it's just like there may be something we have no idea how to explain that does exist or whatever, like maybe that's just how it works or maybe nothing does truly exist. And if those are the two options over here, opposed to the idea of a creator, then this notion that we know for sure is not a creator and science has disproven it is obviously laughable. Do you understand my main premise? Can you at least acknowledge that
no,
once
I
we
think
went all the
what you
way
say
through
is
the
obviously
thermodynamic?
laughable. I mean, if you just didn't like screw it up right there, you just like ruined it with that one.
No, I'm
Obviously
saying I'm
laughable.
saying the claim that science has definitively disproven a creator and that the only viable option is that there isn't one and that science has proved it is obviously laughable. That's what I'm saying. Not saying that in your that belief that there is no creator is obviously laughable, although I
You're
actually
kind
would
of
say that.
lumping a
I'm
couple
not saying
things
that.
together there. You're making it difficult,
Okay.
bro, because I'm not claiming that science disproved a creator. I'm saying that your logic, you're trying to essentially word juggle our way back to the idea that we can prove a creator based on the idea of causality, based on our understanding of thermodynamics. It's like we're stacking up a house of cards here and then we're reaching
Oh,
the
let me
pinnacle
phrase
and
it one
saying,
more
I
time
see
and
it
then I'm
over the
gonna quit.
mountaintop.
I'm gonna give up. This one doesn't work. Can you acknowledge that this idea, notion, or claim that there being no creator and it being like ostensibly called science, like this idea that there is no creator, is significantly more viable than the idea that there is no creator? Can you acknowledge that that is actually untrue when you actually unpack examples such as thermodynamics? That it's significantly more
I think it's
viable.
wrong when they call you word salad because it's not what word salad means. But I feel like you add more words to it. What if we boil it down like this? Would this be sufficient? Are you asking me to agree that the idea that everything came from something, then from nothing?
No, no, no. What I'm
Doesn't it
asking
boil
is,
it down to that?
can you acknowledge that like the mainstream kind of claim that there being no creator is way more viable than there being a creator is incorrect?
The mainstream claim that there's no creator.
Yeah,
You're
like
saying that
basically viable is not even the best word. Like you don't like the
okay? So yeah,
mainstream consensus.
that's what I
Okay,
mean.
look, we both know that like the mainstream consensus in academia is that there is no creator.
I feel like I totally know what you're asking me, but you're also asking it to me in like a way that's like overloaded, and it makes me not want to
Yeah, I'm not
engage
trying to
with it.
like trick you or
Like, don't
anything. I'm
load it
trying to
so
like
much.
just
Just
in
say
the
it
com
simple.
I'm trying to wrap it up, right? Like
Yeah.
academia is 98% atheist. Okay. So what I'm saying is, can you acknowledge that this kind of like mainstream consensus that there is clearly no creator is actually incorrect
I
or
haven't been hearing that
misinformed?
actually. Here's the problem. You're asking me to agree with you that these people are wrong, and I don't know who you're talking about because I don't hear them say
98%
that.
of academia is
Well,
atheist.
I mean, I haven't. Well, I haven't encountered like I don't know that. Like if you say
Yeah,
so,
it's like 90 to 98% or something like that
but
of
what do they
like
even
academic
mean by that?
professors.
Like, are they getting lumped into atheists because they say they don't believe in Jesus and the
No, no,
Bible?
like
Like, I
actual
don't know what you mean.
questionnaire, like surveys of like academic professors. They're largely atheist. They're also largely liberal. but much higher percentage of atheists than like say leftism.
Does that mean that they engage in debates where they say, no, I'm sure everything came from nothing?
They
And
That
literally
means that
say
if
that.
they filled out a
literally say that.
survey and it asked them if they were atheist, agnostic, or a creationist,
but
they
you
would
know what
say
I mean.
atheist.
In
Yeah.
context of a person and their mentality, what that means to them is I don't actively believe in a God. Like I don't pray. I don't believe in a theological creation myth. Like I'm an atheist. Like I don't know God.
It's more
And
like they openly say we came from nothing and then say we came from monkeys after that.
Yeah, and that there's no creator. I mean, let's just be real. Like the mainstream
That's what they
scientific
say.
consensus right now is supposedly that very thing he just said.
but I don't know if maybe that's just not, maybe I'm wrong. Okay, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't perceive it that way. So you're wanting me to agree with you in an argument against something I don't perceive as being a thing. So I mean, I guess so. If you're telling, so I'll give you that. I'll give it to you though. If you're right that 98% of scientists are actively saying and insisting that everything that we know in the universe came out of non-existence for no reason. If you're claiming that they're saying that everything that exists
No, they're just
started
saying
to
that they're
exist,
atheist. Like everyone knows that, like, for example,
you're
like
then loading it with this description that means that everything that exists came from non-existence for no reason.
no, I was
That's
just
what
pointing. I
atheist
was just
means.
stamping what he said, which that happens to be the general consensus of those things. That the Earth is almost 5 billion years old. That based on random chaotic happenstance, that the Earth just so happens to be sustainable and then eventually develops life and all this stuff. And even though none of that works, and I can debunk in a million different ways, like the faint young sun paradox, for example,
You're
I'm not.
overloading it again.
No,
You're
I'm
doing the
saying
thing.
I'm trying to set all that aside and say it's pretty simple. We can all level with each other, and we know that in 2024, I guess now 2025 almost, right? Like the notion that the belief is that Christianity is this very primitive or like really just creationism, a belief in a sky daddy
Basically,
is
yeah,
this like
exactly. So when people say they're atheists, they're saying, I don't believe in a sky daddy. I don't believe in a magic power person who did this.
sure. And what I'm
That's
saying
what
is,
they mean when they say they're atheists.
okay,
I don't
what
believe in a
percentage of
magic
those
person.
people do you think actually have ever even heard and thought about the argument we just discussed and actually have applied logic to it and tried to come to the most sound, reasonable conclusion? The answer
Oh,
is
well, if you're asking me
probably
that
less
question,
than
I would
5%.
be surprised to find out that they haven't sat around, these atheist secular scientists haven't sat around and smoked weed and had a conversation with, well, where do you think everything came from then? And well, how could energy come from non-energy? You think that they haven't thought this through? I would be extremely profoundly shocked
No,
to find out that 95% of them have never even thought of this, Witsit.
no, I think
Ace
they all
Austin, they
think
have thought of it.
yeah, they all believe that it was perpetually here. Like from my experience, every time I talk to someone like that, like a pseudo intellectual professor, PhD, whatever, that's an atheist, they all just say, I bet it was probably always here. They think that that's a viable option. They don't even actually know. There's like an illusion that because that they're a professor, they've actually thought about all these logical things. They haven't. Most people think that it was always here.
Well,
They
like
believe
I
in a
said,
multiverse.
if I found out that was the case, I would be surprised because I would guess, my guess, because I don't have any sampling of this, I would guess that 98% of the secular atheist scientists that you interviewed, if you hit them with this, I don't mean in a debate where they're in front of people and they're having to answer for it and their credentials on the line, but if you just sat around and talked with them, you'd find out, yeah, I've been thinking about this stuff and it really perplexes me. I'm interested to know the answer. I'm open to a lot of different possibilities. It's very spooky and mysterious. The fact that anything exists at all is kind of far out, man. And we're interested in discovering how we could probably get our minds wrapped around how anything could come into existence. And the idea that it comes from a beyond the reality that we know place is something we can't really grapple with with our tools of science. But like, who's to say? I would guess that they would be like more close to that than no, for sure. Like, no, I'm convinced because of science that everything in existence came from non-existence by itself. Like, that's not what I
No,
hear them
I'm
saying.
saying that some of them just think it's perpetual, so they don't even have to make that. So a lot of people think that everything came from nothing, but that like if you go watch any of like the mainstream kind of like science, cosmology channels and videos and series, they almost will all say nothing. Like they will say, like the scientific communicators, they will say nothing. Like Michio Kaku said, yeah, everything came from nothing, but turns out nothing is everything. And they just say this like really stupid, retarded stuff like it's profound. But I think a lot of them, from my experience, actually kind of haven't fully thought it out, and they think that it was perpetual or that there's a multiverse or something,
But see, what
something
I think,
that doesn't involve a god. Like whatever it
but
is, it
almost
just
all of
can't
them,
involve a god.
but almost all of them are kind of friendly to the idea of a simulation theory, which, by the way, antecedent to simulation would be simulator. And so it's like, if you get them to agree that we might be in a simulation, the antecedent is simulator. So who simulated it? What is it simulating? Simulation of what? And they're all kind of like open to that, but they're like, based on science, it's like, yeah, okay, if you say nothing is everything, that's sort of like actually true. Like if we are in a simulation, if it is Minecraft mode, Minecrafters build some ones and zeros, but like it's all relations. There are no
Dude,
ones or zeros.
Bro,
Dangerous.
you said earlier Minecraft didn't have to have a creator or something. Remember, I used the same thing you're saying against you when you were
Well, my
arguing
point
against
is,
me.
the Minecraft world doesn't even actually exist. It's like one way of looking at it. There's no actual world with an actual person in an actual space, but there's space and there's blocks and there's a dragon and all that stuff. That's not even real. And so there is, and also the idea is that Minecraft Steve, sitting around in there working with Redstone and doing all of his logic and setting up systems to try to break the Minecraft, he's not going to eventually discover the Java code. Like it's a layer removed. It's like it's a category above, and he's not going to get it. And so that's what I feel like we're doing when we use our words and we try to do antecedent of creator. It's like we're at a limit to, like, logic only goes so far, and then you end up in transcendentals.
Well, I think we disagree, but it's all good. So, like, pretty good
Well, one sec,
conversation.
Austin, one sec. Run Boston. Can somebody mute Run Boston or put him in the
Oh,
top mic?
shit. I got him. Hold on.
Oh, he's muted now.
He muted.
Somebody got him.
Yeah, so I mean, it was a cool, cordial conversation. I would appreciate it if you you can disagree with me, even claim that everything I think is stupid or whatever. I would appreciate it. Do whatever you want to. I'm saying I really don't care that much, but that you don't really like slander me in the sense that you're claiming that I'm like tactically deceiving people and lying and all that stuff. 'Cause it's not true. I don't really care, but it's just like I felt like you were trying to bait me into an interaction or something. I think that's kind of gay.
Yeah,
I think that's good. But and then I don't know, I'm down to talk to Adam maybe whatever privately. I don't know. He like rarely just wouldn't let it go, and I end up having to like publicly tweet back at him. But anyway, it's all cool. And I will say a conclusion about this whole conversation. I think very clearly that the intelligent design angle, necessary antecedent to creation, being a creator, that actually logically satisfies all of the necessary questions you get from truly examining the first second law. The other side is just like there could possibly be something that we just don't understand at all that I can't even articulate in theory to you, and maybe that's the case. And it's like I don't know, or maybe nothing even actually exists. And I'm not making fun of you. That is like what I always get. And I just think that people should really sit back and think about it. Just be fair, be unbiased, right? Like check any confirmation bias. Which one is more viable there? Like which one actually seems true to you? Like which one actually makes the most logical sense? And either that nothing actually exists, or maybe there's some supernatural force that made it all. I mean, obviously, the one that satisfies all the questions makes the most sense, right? But so we can agree or disagree. I guess it's all good. And I've never like disliked you, other than I start to see you like really
other
stepping
than
over the
being an
line and
asshole on the timeline.
yeah, like the character assassination. And if there were some truth to it, I'd take it on the chin. But there isn't, and I don't like it. I don't like being called a grifter because it's just like really pisses me off. And I think
Yeah.
you're better than that, actually. I think you're better than that. I think Adam Green is better than that. That's why a lot of people are like, damn, I can't believe Adam is acting like this about flat Earth. Because you both are better than that. And you're lumping yourself in with people like these Matoons and FTFEs that just have no moral fiber, no
Well, I could say the
nobility.
same thing to you, Witsit. I mean, like you're dealing with them right now. A ton of the people in your community that you're lumped in with are like saying that you didn't even go to Antarctica, and they're totally bad faith with their interpretation of shadows and
Correct.
footprints
Yeah,
and like all
correct.
sorts
And they're
of
slandering
crazy
me.
bullshit. So
Yeah.
we aren't the company that we keep. There is an association, but we're not the same person. And just as
So-
much as
well,
you don't like me
I'm
calling
saying,
you a
like, you're
liar,
acting like
I don't
them
like
in
you
that
calling me dumb. I mean, I know you don't really mean it, but sometimes your response to me is, "Well, Big Tech's just a stupid idiot who doesn't even have the brain power to comprehend these things."
I've
I
never said
clearly
that.
do.
I've never
I
said
could
that.
pull the tweet up. But I mean, I don't take it
remember that.
personally. But I mean, sometimes
I
we
said
devolve in
you
our
were
rhetoric a little
actually
bit.
stupid,
Yeah.
like personally. Oh, well, I'm sorry.
Well, I mean,
I'm
it
sure
hurt
you.
my
I'm sure
feelings.
you
I'm just
asked for
saying,
it. I'm sure you asked for
good
it.
for the goose, good for the gander. So if you call
I'm
me
just saying, I
stupid,
feel like
I
you
call you a
asked for
liar.
that. For me to actually call you stupid and say your
Right.
position's stupid, you really probably went over the top. But I don't know. I'll look at
Yeah,
it.
and maybe I feel justified in saying like, well, you told everybody there was no 24-hour sun, and then you went and there was, so you kind of asked for it to be called,
Well, yeah,
an
I'll take
idiot
that
in
on the
front of
chin.
everybody
No
or
big
whatever.
deal. Oh, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
But not a
But
grifter. But anyway, I'm saying
okay.
you're better than that. You're better than that. I'm not saying you're the company that you keep. I'm saying because, like you said, it's not exclusive to ideology. Look how insane, schizophrenic, and dishonest so many flat earthers are acting right now. I entirely disavow all of them. And there are a lot of people that are quote unquote globers that are just being level headed. And obviously, it's easier for them. The evidence is like what they wanted it to be or what they believed it was, but they're still just being more fair all around. And um, yeah, I think I apply the criticism all ways. But my point is that I'm not lumping you in with those people just because you think the Earth's a globe or because you even suggest them or even talk to them or watch them. It's because you're just doing some of the stuff that they do that regardless of what you think the Earth is just not acceptable in
Well,
terms of like nobility. So
you can call it gay and lame, but there is a level to this game that we're in here where it does come down to rhetorics. And in a debate, rhetorical devices are powerful, and you use them. And we have some to our disposal. So sometimes mockery, sometimes tomfoolery. It's like if it matters to us to, a lot of it's a fight for logic, a lot of it's a fight over reality, but a lot of it's just a fight for the hearts and minds. So there's like a political aspect to it, literally, like not nation
you're only
politics,
winning over
but
like the worst of the worst by saying stuff like Witsit a grifter and actually doesn't think the Earth's flat. And he's a con man, just stealing money from people. Like most Glovers will tell you that that's ridiculous. And I'm just saying, like, so who are you really winning over if you're calling that politics? You're winning over like the worst of the worst that happen. No, they're almost all anonymous. They don't adhere to accountability. And I like who cares? Quality over quantity. To each their own. Do what you want to do. Like I said, I'm just saying I genuinely think that both of you are better than that. And normally I don't see you guys act like that. It's just like flat earth pulls it out of you. And I think it's because the guys you went to look to get answers, that's how they act. And it kind of just becomes normal and you become desensitized. You start to view flat earthers as almost subhuman in a way that it's the group that really they're, all bets off. You can say and do anything to those people and it's okay. And that isn't true. And some of the smartest people I know are flat earthers. I'm supposed to be talking to a PhD physicist from Harvard that's a flat earther here soon. Like this idea that you're out of it, like they're all just retards that can be like treated like they're subhuman because they don't believe in the mainstream globe model is kind of ridiculous, and I don't think that that's like a good standard to live by or a good precedent to set.
Yo, if you think that
well,
was tough, you've been debating the Witsit clone they sent to Antarctica. The real Witsit would have done you even worse.
That's so funny.
Yeah, I'm not even talking to the real Witsit. This is the clone that came back. Yeah, no, I feel you on that, but also it's not even if you really want to get to know me, you got to know my history. I come from a way more brutal background than the amount of grief that I'm giving you is honestly, the heat and volume is turned way down compared to the people I used to battle with from a whole other arena. So I come from a sector where it's blood sports and it's life ruination and there's doxing and crazy
rise
shit
above it,
there.
bro. Rise above it.
But also as far as, I know some of the Globers can be scandalously rude and defamatory and libelous and all the rest of it. But I like you said, a lot of the flat earthers are not exactly a real dandy to deal with. I've been talked over and harassed and ridiculed and muted and bad faith ad hommed and straw manned and like a million things by other flat earthers who I talk to. So some of them are real pieces of shit. And a lot of them, in fact. So this room has been really cool. And you're actually one of the better ones to talk to, which is probably why I focus on you the most, because you have a lot of influence and you know what you're talking about and you make very persuasive arguments and a lot of people really believe in you but I am fundamentally opposed to this idea of flat earth catching on as a common parlance in the minds of people. So I am following you because I find you to be a key pillar and I'm trying to take you down like straight up.
Well, good luck, brother.
He wants to take you out.
Good luck, bro. At least
It's more than It's more than persuasive, dude. That thermodynamics thing he just ran you through, that's rock solid.
Yeah, in the minds of some people, it's very rock solid.
No, there's no coming back from that big take. I'm sorry. Yep. You might need to go away and think about that. But just on what you were saying earlier,
I'd like you to think about more of what I said too. He's appealing to the
possibility
of God.
Just what was said just a minute ago. That you might have been talking to fake flat earthers because there's a huge fucking group of people who call themselves flat earthers who aren't.
Maybe.
So,
but I mean, I've been in
keep that in mind.
Space, and I've been in the Flat Earth Friday space, and I've been in
also worth pointing
Flat
out
Earth Discord the other night for like 9 hours.
Oh, 24/7?
Worth 24/7 is pretty bad actually. Worth pointing out. I mean, bad in the fact that some people they are.
I think they're pretty real flat earthers. That Indio guy I was talking to.
Yeah.
Indio's pretty cool. Indio's pretty cool. I will say that. But I was just going to point out the Toons, the McKeegans, the Simon Dan. Are these people demonetized? Witsit?
No. I think we made like 50K on Antarctica.
Oh. But yeah, Witsit is, and he barely curses. I don't think I can't remember the last time I heard Witsit curse. And he's demonetized? How's that work?
Yeah.
And he's a grifter.
Yeah, so stupid.
Well,
no, but McToon admitted to all of us.
Grift
He is
is a
literally
loose term.
McToon actually just admitted to all of us.